Okay, we're flashing R. Let me turn my camera on briefly to show you I am sort of here, and we'll find out whether or not that holds online. Because of the ups and downs, the internet, we are presuming our evolution hours aren't really hours. They are however long we are. So have a piece of video that's technically on YouTube. That way I can put in all the sources. So continuing with replacing Darwin. About geology here, a bunch of creationist catastrophism, more Baumgardner, Austin, old material largely, no sign of any criticism. He's slipping more creationism into his references. I'll be putting links up to Austin and a bunch of Baumgardner pieces, plus some assorted criticisms of those works, which, needless to say, Jeanson doesn't do anything on. The second part of the show has to do with some goalpost movings from Mitchell, Elizabeth Mitchell. Well, let me jump on. I just jumped up on my screen here. Where she had a brand new posting, well, not a brand new posting, but the AI Answers in Genesis to a 2016 posting from Elizabeth Mitchell, which was dismissing licensed 2013 paper on the evolution of turtle shells. And that one, of course, was a pile of goalpost moving, but they present no mechanism by which a pre-turtle could obtain the genetic information to change its ribs into the characteristic T-shape of a turtle's, nor any mechanism to explain how the turtle obtained other unique features like its unusual pectoral girdle. Well, the problem was that technical papers often don't go into all the details of everything that they're dealing with, but they will allude to stuff. And it happened to be the case that the licensed paper explicitly cited a 2011 paper by Kuratani, who, quote, used the timing of development of key shell features to predict ancestral morphologies and secondarily place fossils within this developmental framework, unquote. And this new fossil they were analyzing fell into that framework. Unfortunately, the Kuratani paper isn't available online, but for freebies. But I did personally download it, and I'll be putting the link to the abstract into the field. I do believe Jackson is here. Let's get you on the road. Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, I have no clue how long this will last, so we'll just get what we can out of the way. I was just mentioning a bunch of creationist claptrap that Jeanson was doing in his footnotes for a bunch of Baumgardner on catastrophic geology, really old work. The most recent one was like 2003. I'll be putting all links into that. So he's now up to 28% of his main source base is just creationist stuff. And it's a very limited range of creationist stuff at that. He's not exactly running a field on how the field had gone like since 2003. Like even his own side has posted more recent material on that. So it's very superficial. Then part two, which I was just going into, relates to how Elizabeth Mitchell was trotted out just recently by an AIG tweet trying to dismiss the licensed work on the evolution of turtle shells. And this prodded me to investigate more about her dismissal of this. Supposedly they aren't talking about the genetics. Well, it turns out that the license paper explicitly cited a 2011 paper by Kuratani, which I had put up in front of the screen so everybody can see it. It's not available open access, but I am going to put the abstract in. And that paper in turn had drawn on a 2005 paper done by themselves and their colleagues, which related to exact genes that were involved in the formation of the carapacial ridge, which is the thing that relates to the thing that the Kuratani paper was relating to, where they were explicitly predicting what fossil forms would look like. And then along comes License to point out, hey, there we got the actual fossils. Boop, boop. Connect all those cute little dots. And I'll be putting the abstract into that 2005 Karaku paper as well. So the consistent pattern that we find is that if play source methods game is really fun, that you can check up on what people cite and don't let the bullshit on the basis of even citing a technical paper. If you follow up on the material, which you can do, you can find out which side's playing fair with the facts and which one isn't. I was kind of late getting started today because I was busy researching stuff, putting material in the new book, and also there were some idiots online. Black was just putting up a big post going after Fauci that I've decided that really that is relevant to our future discussion of conspiracy thinking on this stuff. So I've been laying down all that material. So there's a lot of stuff going on in there. Let me quickly mention our patrons for the project. While we're still online here, we got Henrel, Colton in capital letters, Eric Rowley, Surison, Zeshi, Travis Adams, Ian Chen, Convert Me, Stephen Early, Eat Meal, James Fitzwater, History Minder, Ralph McFadden, Pelagia, Benjamin Simpson, Slava, Speed of Sound, Studio, DM Wing, Command, Cyborg, Doronku, Jelly, The Lavender Lady, Totus Real, Christopher Johnson, Antoine Botts, Stephen Bauman, Marigale Beddoes, Daniel Insects Are Cool, Morton Nielsen, Paul the Skeptic, Papalophagus, Bo Rasmussen, Devin Reeves, Alex Stone, Paul Williams, and our legacy patrons. I'm still going to mention ya. Jen and Jody, Mike, John, Keith, Andrew Dyer, Yui, Mona, Brad, Daniel, Nana, Staggle, Sun, Skystone, Ugly German, Truths, Everett, and Sewer at one point or another. And so I'm never going to forget that. So now that we've got the material out of the way, whatever length this video goes, I'll be able to put all the links in. So that will be the meat of the thing. Say something, Jackson. What are you up to?
Same old. Really, just school and work.
Yes.
Working on a new script, which my end is done. It's getting edited right now.
That's
so
the one
be
on
fun.
Artie?
Correct. And then this weekend, I'll be in Austin for the Faithless Forum.
Yeah. Tell everybody about your channel, my channel, our books, my books on myself, what plans are afoot, prod Erica and others to extol how wonderful our projects are, and everybody else that you bump into there. Waste not this opportunity, lad.
Indeed, I'm very excited. It's going to be a fun time.
Yeah, and then quietly nudge them. You could have invited RJ too.
I mean, I say email like Thomas Westbrook.
Maybe next time around there. You know, anyway, it's been a really fun thing. I think everyone's going to be delighted with the sheer scale of the chapter and how much of not only the legends about how the Noah's lore has spread through the system and how idiots have been going on and how it's divided a lot of the creationist community because some of them accept it and some don't. The Ron Wyatt camp. Apologia, bless his heart, just did a recent video where along the way, it was on another topic, but along the way, there was a compendium of the various instances in which Kent Hovind has been extolling Ron Wyatt and his fabulous archaeological discoveries. And so it was like an incredible laundry list of examples where basically Kent believes everything Ron Wyatt said on everything, including having found Noah's wife, who the remains of Noah's wife, who was 11 feet tall.
Well, that's certainly something.
Yeah.
Because
that would be something. Yes.
Necessarily makes you taller. I guess that works somehow.
That's an amazing phenomenon. I'm not seeing any of the chat coming up, so I'm not sure how we're flitting in there. But theoretically, we're still on the line. So we'll see what goes. But yeah, Ron Wyatt, who died, I think, in 1999. So it's just his wife and some of her colleagues and that are still pushing
his 11-foot tall wife.
Yes. If only Ron Wyatt's wife were 11 feet tall, that would be an astonishing thing that we could kind of deal with. But she could probably get a gig on a Star Trek series, easy. But that's not how that's working out. Anyway, Wyatt, who I had some information on his stuff on finding the Exodus chariot wheels and stuff like that, but this additional material worked in very, very nicely. So it's going to be a delicious compendium of stuff. All the stuff on the cryptozoology and the various attempts to hijack other people's traditions. Of course, we're going to be discussing the Egyptians and how the pyramids were not actually built when the Egyptians thought they built them. You've got to move all of that down. But they've also tried to expropriate China. They've ones that totally accept completely made up lore. There's some supposed Indian lore on the creation, which was a 19th century forgery that some creationists have actually accepted. Kent Hovind and Onyate Band, where supposedly human beings and dinosaur fossils were found together, which was a deliberate hoax back in 1999, and Kent Hovind swallowed it. It's
Gravy.
It's a wonderful amount of stuff. Yeah,
I mean,
it's
RJ, he swallowed the Ica stones, he swallowed the Akambaro figures. He will take literally anything.
Yeah, that's another. All of the Ica stones and the other figurines. That also is one that acts as a dividing line, because there are branches of young Earth creationism that go, don't use those, and other ones are going, well, maybe. And then other ones are going, no, they're real. And Eric Hovind and Kent Hovind fall in the, oh, they're real. Or they acknowledge that maybe some of them are fraudulent, but there are some legitimate ones in there. Please don't ask for details. It's that kind of a thing.
Right.
And so you find mutations, evolutionary lines of lineages that go on, the systematics of Wu, where various beliefs are promoted and then they start becoming debunked. And so they get slided aside like Paluxy, and yet you've still got people in the Karl Barth camp, or people who read old Karl Barth and think it's all legit. So there's a constant resurgence of various ones of these lineage, like ghost lineages that keep on popping up, like bad pennies.
Oh,
and
we have audience.
Oh, yay! Okay, you're seeing it from your end. I'm not seeing it from mine, but we will take that as we go. We're getting a little bit slow on the thing. My major, try to get whatever we can. I'm doing this for the Replacing Darwin book, but everybody can do work they consider relevant. So if you have a particular work, and it doesn't have to be a creationist work, it could be any work, and you have a proper reference bibliography, for example, compile one and track down the sources. And you'll learn more about the field. You'll also discover whether they're playing fair with the facts or not. So it's a delightful thing, and make it known to people. So if you can do a YouTube channel at least as well as I can, which is not very good, anybody can join in on that and let people know about it. Or if you find that somebody has already brought up that particular topic, you can add that material in and try to make it available. You can set up files that can be put into the cloud so that people can access it. Get the information organized and structured in the same way that I've been trying to do with and hopefully we'll have some maybe things down the line with some new website approaches that will make that tip material restructured so that it can be easily accessible on people's smartphones and all the rest. And then eventually I can hand it over to some living vertebrates who would like to keep up the project after I'm gone, which I will not be here forever. And it's not an instantaneous transition time, but eventually I don't want this thing to fizzle away the way, say, Talk Origins has kind of gotten moribund, or the National Center for Science Education. As if you want to have things that are low budget enough that they don't require a gigantic amount of funding, and that can make maximum use of all the tools that we have available, because we all know just how much information people can acquire these days. And if one person can acquire from one direction, people can trade the files back and forth and all that. So to build up a network in all different disciplines, if there's anybody out here that catches sight of this, or if anybody watching the show knows people like who are astrophysicists and cosmologists, would it be fun to have like Sabine Hossenfelder on the team? I mean, my God, she's done absolutely spectacular postings and things, and I'm sure she could get. dive into that kind of
We have a
area rather
creationist in the
nicely.
side chat.
Again, I'm not seeing that. Which one?
It's
We get one
so
that
this
haunts.
person named, is it someone named Gregory Burlington?
Oh, I don't think
Does-
I've spotted him before. Let me see.
Oh, this person says evolutionists try saying that iron can preserve. So it's supposed to be preserved the dinosaur soft tissue, but creationist websites have published articles about how iron could not preserve it.
Oh, well, those
So,
creationists are wrong.
well, so first, that's wrong. They're always wrong about the soft tissue, but also, two creationists wrote an article which actually got published in a scientific journal in which they wrote that no one is disputing that the iron could preserve the soft tissue, and they wrote that about dinosaur fossils. So when they take
Yeah.
off their creationist hat and put their science hat on, then they do regular science work.
Yeah,
So
we're going to have a
anyway,
whole big section on that soft tissue issue in the new book. So rest assured,
issue.
soft tissue issue. Yes. Have a tissue handy while reading the soft tissue issue section
Yes.
of the rocks were there too. There's been a bunch of material on it, and not only just the soft tissue issue, but also the supposed ability to radiocarbon date dinosaurs or anomalous dates. That stuff pops up as kind of like a little side issue here. It's a recurring theme in creationist apologetics. There's no doubt about that. But it's not something that does all that well. So anyway, our creationists, I can't see the chat, so I don't know what the comments are, but you can simply let him know. Gee whiz, did you fact check any of those arguments, or are you merely assuming that what you've read from the creationist is a valid bit? Some of it involves the osteocyte issue, that they seem to go kind of overboard on that. Armitage does that, and we'll be discussing Armitage's air quotes triceratops horn as well. It'll be the full Monty in here. It's too good to pass up because it's kind of
so funny.
critical. Yeah, and it's the same old shell game because the creationist grasps at straws. There's a colossal amount of hype with all the soft tissue stuff because we're not talking big chunks of meat with flowing blood vessels, like you would find, or the level of preservation that you get with Ötzi the Iceman. That would be an example of something, or mummified mammals and the like that are trapped that are only a few thousand years old, and so they're in absolutely spectacular shape, and you can get DNA from them and the whole 9 yards. What you find on these things is that exceedingly old stuff, theoretically, you can have little bitsy bits of the remnants of stuff that have gotten preserved at a level that show you fine detail inside of closed spaces that didn't get corroded. So, they're not just a big chunk of meat. They're tiny stuff that they've extracted from the inside of bone, for example, where they basically in a sealed container. And little tiny bits of that, you can infer lots of stuff just in the way they've been able to infer melanosomes from bird fossils to where they can tell what color they were. Certain chemicals in biology have counterpart decay chain effects, so that when they are fossilized, even that they can still reflect internal structures and details. But the idea that you've got Armitage would take the stuff and dissolve it in acid and be surprised that it's fluid. I mean, that's basically what it's boiling down to.
Yeah, I mean, the papers on the soft tissue point out that it's not going to be in its original state. It's been diagenically changed, and so it's preserved now slightly differently. The chemical composition has changed compared to what it originally was. So,
yeah. Anyway, will be a nice comprehensive little section on that. It's going to be a fairly extensive info box in there, and then of course we've got so many other chapters to do. So I'm figuring that we can anticipate somewhere in like mid 2022 for the second rocks volume, because both of us have an enormous amount of work to do to get everything up to speed, and of course keeping track of all the incoming material. Probably the first one from your end I'll want to see is your take on where our positions that we did in volume 1 stand, because that'll be then updated with some material opening chapter. And then I swing in with my big slosh chapter and the cosmology stuff, and then we get off into all the other areas, the human evolution thing. We're going to be having so much on the dinosaurs and all of those paleo worlds, which will bring in all the Grand Canyon and geological material. And it's just going to be juicy. And I'm cross-checking against the original book to make sure that in where we're reprising new topics that are ones that we brought up to some extent, that we're not duplicating the material we had in the first work. So it's all going to be breaking new ground in terms of material, and there's been enough new material on there that's really fun. So it'll be a companion volume that can kind of expand on things. That's it'll be a fun bit to go to. But by constructing all of the indexing and reference bibliography while writing, that speeds up and organizes that. I would just have my brain fried if I tried to do a second volume on this cold, to where you were then having to go back each time to find out what you had discussed. No, it's having a master bibliography has been enormously helpful on this. Whee!
Exactly.
So what will be the discussions topics at the convention that you're going to? Plug that, Jackson.
Well, because it's the Faithless Form, it's predominantly for the more atheist YouTube channels like Prophet of Zod, Apologia, Genetically Modified Skeptic, all those guys. I, as well as Erica, are coming in for more of the science education stuff. So we're going to be talking about science education and conspiracy theories and stuff like that. So that's what we'll be there for.
You know if Paul's going to be there and Zod?
I believe so. Yes.
Oh, great. You can actually interact with them in person, and thank Paul for the help he gave in helping to plug the book when it first came out.
Oh yeah, because I met like Zod and Paul in person last time I was there, which was back in 2019. Also, Aaron will be there. That'll be fun.
Yeah, see if you can convert Aaron to a full source methods approach. He needs to get down into that down and dirty more. It's hard to get him below the data floor.
Yeah, well, I mean, I understand that. So,
yeah, it's not a natural thing to do, because it's when people look at like footnotes and references, they either their eyes glaze over as if that's just kind of a perfunctory layer to the front text argument. But from my point of view, that's where the meat of it comes in, that you can say anything you like, but if you can't actually document it soundly, and if you haven't thought through enough to realize the pitfalls of what you're dealing with, you can run into trouble that way. And so I keep my feelers out on a lot of little levels. And if we think what we were doing on this Rocks Were There project is massive, wait till you see the scale of what we'll have to do for the religion book. Holy smokes.
Right.
Wow, that's going to be, because that's not only cognitive literature and cultural history and political history, and there's going to be so many layers of it. And we'll want to, every other work that I've seen in this area tends to bypass most of the religions, and they tend to be tunnel vision on just, for example, Judeo-Christian tradition or Islam, may drag in Islam. And that, although that's immensely important, a lot of things go on, that's not most of the planet, and it's not most of the history of things, because none of the existing religions go back terribly far. And so we have to think way back. We're going to have our thinking caps on in putting this into perspective on what was going on earlier. And just as I suspect that language systems are going back way farther than some might think, who kind of think that like humans were the first ones with grammatical language, I think that religion is going back in ways that aren't necessarily relating to a lot of the issues that later religions do. fear of an afterlife, of death, is often deemed to be one of the defining drivers of religion. And I'm suspecting that may not be a factor as big as people think it is. That there are purpose and teleology, yes, but not necessarily personal survival, because it took an awful long time for religions to kind of that in. And it kind of started as sort of an elite special consolation prize. You certainly find that when you get into Babylonian mythology, where you save the world from the flood, you get immortality. Ta-da! And then only later on do some religions start really dwelling on the idea of survival, and not necessarily in a nice way. The Romans.
RJ, I have to say I apologize. I apologize presently for wasting your time with that creationist earlier, because he's clearly bonkers or just a troll. So I won't be reading anything else of his.
Well, he could be both. There has never been anything to preclude being bonkers and a troll. In fact, perhaps bonkers minds make best trolls because they're shameless and arrogant and stupid. So what was he dribbling on off? Did he go all flat Earth or what?
I mean, it might as well have been. But it turns out
something vile.
Paul says he's not going to be there at the Faithless Forum. So, but there are going to be a lot of YouTubers. RJ, I do wish I was there. Because I missed out on meeting you in person previously, just a couple weeks ago. Very sad about that. So.
And before that, when I was driving by the place where you would have been had you not gone on to somewhere else.
And I was there the next day, so yeah, very sad.
Yeah, well,
we just
eventually
keep missing each other, RJ.
One way or the other, things will occur. And on our local FFRF affiliation, as finally we're restarting our in-person meetings here in Washington State, and conveniently enough at the library that just opened up near me. That's got a nice meeting room and all that. So we're kind of gradually easing back into a little bit more of normalcy, provided we can avoid Idahoans with their anti-maskers out there still keeping COVID going. Yeah. Funky. Anyway, we tried to drive Colton and Dakota and I tried to drive through Idaho as quickly as possible both ways to avoid too much contact with them. I think we stopped for gas once on our way back, and that was about it.
Yeah.
Okay. Well. So where are we getting any questions or comments other than our idiot Burlington guy?
Not really. Not any. Question. We got Brainbug in the chat over here.
Oh, hi, Brainbug. How are the insects going? It is real. It is not. I'll see whether I can get back onto camera here. There we go. And maybe you've got little Christmas ornaments up. These are some of my. I call them Mrs. Holly. That always make sure are up at some point or another. They're from very, very ancient times in the family. They go back. I think they probably date to the 1940s, and we're in our family all this time. And I've been awfully fond of them. I should probably bring them over here. Yes. It never had actually a name, but I call them Mr. and Mrs. Holly.
Oh,
and they're very, very. See, I think Christmas is vastly too entertaining a holiday to be left to Christians. So. So I have my Christmas little houses out and my little trains up on the stairwell and some of the Christmas tree ornaments and stuff. And some of the older ones I'm going to take over to my nieces and see whether or not my grandniece, now that she's starting to have a family, whether they want to cull some of the boxes of some of the really old ones that can kind of pass on the tradition. And we'll find out what all of that's going. So anyway, that brings up everybody up to speed. Next week may or may not be a show. I'll be over on the coast, and we'll kind of wing every Wednesday. But at the very least, we know that we're able to get online with the new Wi-Fi system. Thank you, Colton, for getting that going. And the fact that I can carry that with me seems to work out well enough. So long as we can get any amount of processing going, I will assume then that the number of bars will vary from one week to the next or one moment to the next. So sometimes it'll be awkward and we may only be able to get a tiny show in, and sometimes it'll go fairly well like this, where we're not having a mess on it. And then people, an awful lot of the people that watch the show anyway watch it after the fact. So it's not that big of a hassle on that point. I think we can work around it. The main point is I will continue the source methods approach, which is to provide people with direct links so that people can look this stuff and follow it through on there and make up their own mind on this and be spurred on to their own particular things. I'll always be commenting on some of the particularly wacky creationism stuff, some of which may enter into the book, because a lot of it relates to that, but it may just be subjects that are popping up interestingly at the moment, and kind of keep an eye on things. I don't have the chat overlay, but you can type in R. Joel Duff, Joelduff, our naturalist historia guy. He's starting to do videos now, and sad to say, he isn't getting as high viewership as I am. What's wrong with this picture?
Well, it just takes time,
his stuff. Yeah, so everybody can seek out his channel on YouTube, because he's doing that now in conjunction. Basically, I think he does them whatever times he does them. But the thing is, he keeps tab on CMI and AICR and a lot of their new stuff, and does commentary and links and that. And I've spotted several interesting pieces of woo that have come up because Duff called attention to it. And then the other thing that'll be fun to do in the new book appendix on the Ark encounters kindness, which now that we can get full, more complete, accurate, now we can start analyzing why is it in the order that it is. It's not alphabetical. It's basically structured by going down through the Wikipedia list of families. That's what it's looking like.
Yeah, that's basically what they did.
Yeah, and what Erica and Apper have both called attention to in various venues, some of the problems, double standards. Why are they classifying one thing as a kind but not another? And all that, and then we'll want to do our own take on that. So it'll, I think, be a very, very nice addition to it, because I don't think anyone's really through. It'll also have a complete listing of all the kind things, and another version of it, just like we did with phyla and all that, where you can restructure the data in a different context. Alphabetical versus thematic tells you different kinds of insights. So we'll be generating a list of the kinds alphabetized, so that people can actually locate and research them on their own easily, instead of trying to plow down through that blurry picture that they have at
RJ, that's I'm very excited about having that, because I don't know of any books period that have a list of all the kinds. So yeah, very excited.
And it's probably enormously important, because the one thing that stands out like a sore thumb about it is this is the smallest list of kinds I've ever seen. That if you look back at what Todd Wood and others in Woodmap were bandying about as numbers, they were easily in the tens of thousands at times. And they obviously realized that wasn't going to work with the Ark, that you have to keep it quite small, which means they're forced into this constrained list, where now they're blurring things together in such a way that they have to ignore how you can connect up some of the kinds, which they mustn't allow to do. But the moment they've accepted such enormous speciation, how can they keep the boundary layers between certain related kinds and other kinds? How can they have gone through taxon by taxon the Wikipedia family lists and not be able to connect those dots given the range of each thing? Because the familial relationships are often broader than the side relationships are, because it's just one little characteristic too much for it to be classified as that family, and so it gets its own separate family. But you look at them like Homo galax and Heracitherium, if they were both chasing you in the parking lot, could you easily tell them apart? Early dinosaurs. Could you easily tell a Herrerasaurus from a Compsognathus just by a quick glance? it's as bad as trying to tell the difference between a 1938 Chevrolet and a 1938 Plymouth. It's just not easy to do. And so you looking at all that. So it'll be a delight to the thing that's we want all of our work to add on to the scholarship. And I do know that there are an awful lot of people that even if they're not reading the works for pleasure, they're using them as resource bases. And anyway, I'm also nearly finished on the second Paralogs of Fog novel. I was just writing some neat little dialogue and connective threads to work out chapter 33, and the plot's all done. It's just a matter of working out the little fiddly bits. I probably can't get it done until early 2022. I still got a few more chapters to be able to work out, but when that's done, that will be the second Fog novel. There are some people in Strike's network that will go oogle boogle over finally being able to get that one, and then I can switch back. See, I was trying to maintain a balance between doing the detailed research for the science works and then focus on the book, the novel part, and then flip my brain around to doing research on the next novel while focusing my attention on the next science book. But what I ended up doing in this case was basically having to do two at the same time. And so it's been a weird juggling act, because basically I was working on that second Fog novel all the way through working on The Rocks Were There. And I hope you did not notice at any point where I was being lax on doing my end of The Rocks Were There. So that's a thing that I've been trying to deal with. It's a different mindset that you do in a novel context because it's theatrical and it involves emotional context and pure historical research, and you can make up stuff and all of that in a way that isn't the case with the science area where you have to like pay attention to the data. And
this is true.
So they're very different ways of dealing with stuff, but they're both vastly entertaining. And I always have those outs to where if my brain gets frazzled working on one little thing, I can kind of flip out and go over to the other thing and focus on that. So I get to exercise both ends of my brain in one form or another. So anyway, that kind of goes along on that. Remember, it is holiday time. Gift giving, Christmas, etc., etc. What absolutely perfect gifts to give for the holidays. Paralogs of Phileas Fogg and The Rocks Were There and Evolution Slam Dunk. And you can find links. You'll always be able to find the links to the two science books directly in the description for each one of the videos. And when you get on Amazon, you can go around. Oh, also by James Downard, Paralogs of Phileas Fogg. So get those stocking stuffers. Admittedly, they have to be a fairly sizable stocking to ram, particularly The Rocks Were There in. It's a bulky thing. But nevertheless, it's well worth, or it can make a doorstop, very effective paperweight. There's all sorts of things you can do with them. And if you attempt to hit them over a creationist over the head with them, even if they don't stop to read it can also be a very effective blend from that point of view. So 38 minutes in. Do you have any final comments to put in? We'll kind of truncate this early because I think we got all the material in, and once it finalizes, I can stick in all the linkages.
Now I have to think about it, RJ. I was actually thinking, so one thing I was actually thinking about was kind of doing chapter 1 last, kind of doing chapters 4, was it 4, 5, 6, 7, I guess, because chapter 1 is sort of a recap plus stuff we've learned. So basically anything that has updated or been changed.
Basically, in a matter that some of the recap stuff is actually going to be coming up in the subsequent chapters anyway. So you can basically have that as a thing which says, oh, well, we'll get to that and so forth. Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, that's kind of the way I was thinking of doing that. At least that's what I was thinking. But yeah, chapter 4 is most of the way done. And that's transitions and stasis.
Let the readers know what that one's about.
So that's going to be about transitional fossils, and we're talking about stasis, so good old punctuated equilibrium, all that fun stuff. So yeah, a whole chapter just about that and all the different ways that creationists try to evade transitional fossils.
Yeah. The fact that they never can quite explain what would satisfy them.
Right. Chapter 5 is our dinosaur chapter, so we're going to be talking about birds again and what happened to what really happened to the dinosaurs, because that's a hilarious chapter. I just love it. And then chapter 6 is the human evolution chapter, and then chapter
Well, we get to
7.
step on oodles of toes with that one.
Oh yes. Then chapter 7 is what was the way we phrased it? It's like
Origin tetrapods, aren't the origin of tetrapods in there, like Tiktaalik and
that's
all
4.
that, isn't that?
Yeah, that's chapter
Yeah.
4.
Oh, that's back in 4. Okay.
Chapter what did we call it? The about us. That's right.
Oh,
So
yes, yeah. It's on their bits about eugenics and Darwin responsible for racism
yeah.
and all of the kinds
So
of political sidebars that come in.
it's like
We got a
we're sort of
paleo world
talking.
chapter. That's going to also be. Is that all? Is that going to be structured in with the dinosaur chapter, or is it still a separate
Yes.
chapter? The paleo
Yeah.
world.
That's chapter. That's yeah. Because recap. Then your chapter on the flood is chapter 2, and then
and then the cosmology chapter 3, Twinkle Twinkle
this
Little
chapter
Stars.
3. Yeah. Then transitions is chapter 4. Chapter 5 is the paleo worlds they leave out. Human evolution, and then
it's a lot of stuff. They keep on the thing that makes it so much more difficult but also delightful is that, unlike intelligent design, it is really a little shrunken ball of just a few tropes: Cambrian explosion, stasis, where does information come from, origin of life. Boom, that's basically the entire intelligent design movement, those topics. The creationists, the young earth creationists, just trample over so much more. And so there's so much more to research, but also so much more education to put in, because it covers such a wide range of material that it's just it can be exhausting to keep track of them. The sheer mass of material that comes out. If you think of all the postings of AIG, ICR, and CMI, plus David Kopej and the Discovery Institute, all of that, just keeping track of all of that is daunting.
RJ, I made a mistake. The order of chapters is correct. I got the titles wrong. Chapter 4 is transitions and stasis. 5, so the dinosaur chapters, is billions of dead things. Chapter 6, so the human evolution chapter, is the paleo worlds they leave out. And then chapter 7 is it's really all about us, isn't it? And so, yeah. Okay, I got the...
Anyway, the main point is we'll get all the material in there, and it will be a delightful stretch of material that's... and plus, along the way, non-AIG Darwin's Doubt from Stephen Meyer will get some anvils.
He gets absolutely slammed. I've been waiting for a chance to just absolutely slam his book, and that's what we were doing that. So because I mean, it's like it's very good in terms of propaganda, but it's very bad in terms of arguments. So.
Oh yeah. He's an intriguing writer, not necessarily as fusspotty as Michael Denton is in his work. It tends to be sparsely documented by comparison to, say, Denton. But certainly because he's just so confident about having somehow diffused evolution because of some little minutia that he's latched onto, the chloroquine case and all of that, that you're going, no. It's in a different category, of course, than Jeanson and his Sanford's genetic entropy and all of that stuff, that they have a different thing. But of course, that comes into the book so often because it's directly relating to what exactly did happen to humans and how long have we been doing it, and can we see things that are exceeding the load limit of the young earth creationist frame. Whereas Behe, as you probably already spotted from reading the books and works that is that it's just a fog bank as to what the hell he thinks happened.
If anyone hasn't seen it, please do watch Dan and Behe's talk. Dr. Dan's talk with Michael Behe about evolution.
You can see
and all that
the contrails going over Behe's head.
Like my distinctly favorite quote from that whole talk was when Behe said regarding bacteria and viruses, "I just don't consider them."
We've noticed.
Like Mr. Bacterial Flagellum does not
Yeah.
consider
Well,
bacteria apparently.
and remember, that was not his example to begin with. You know
I
where he
guess.
got that from. It was
Where
from
he got
Michael
that?
Denton.
Oh, fair enough.
Michael Denton's Evolution of Theory and Crisis. Even the picture that was used in Michael Behe's 96 book was taken from the one that's in Denton. So that has been a trope knocking around in there. The funny one to watch actually on the flagellum issue is oh God, his name is suddenly escaping me. Starts with an M, not Minchin, but something else, from Idaho, who actually is a flagellum researcher, Scott Minnick. Scott Minnick. And he hasn't exactly set the house on fire. We mentioned him a little bit in volume 1
Right.
because he was trying to weigh in on the long-term experiments of Lenski, not terribly successfully in my view and our view. But nonetheless, at least he's getting into that. But Behe, really, other than the protein folding stuff he was doing in the early 1990s, he's basically shut down as a scientist and is just an apologist for, air quotes, intelligent design. He's a very politically conservative Roman Catholic, by the way, and which is kind of funky to imagine him and the rather more liberal Ken Miller. But then again, it's not difficult to be more liberal than Michael Behe. Initially he popped up at the Discovery Institute before he got writing stuff on flagellums and all that. His first postings, which I don't believe are there anymore, I've seen them years ago, but they've disappeared, was on privatizing Social Security. That was his little
Ah,
bugbear at the time.
okay.
Yep. So that gives
Yikes.
you a measure. That gives you a measure of where he's coming from. He doesn't typically discuss politics, and in fact, an awful lot of the Discovery Institute gang kind of avoid the topic publicly. It's like the heat issue over in creationism. It's there in the footnotes, but they don't make a big deal out of it. But they're all very politically conservative,
Well,
and
I
so
RJ, the thing I think is so funny about about Darwin's doubt, for instance, is at the very end of the book, like he kind of gives the whole game away in the last chapter when he's like he basically goes into full like church mode. And it's like that's really what it's about at the end of the day. That's all it is. It's not
yeah,
about the
and that's
science.
where he
It's
started. That was that. If you think of Steve Meyer's career from 1995 to the present, starts out in that last chapter mode and then has an interlude at Whitworth University, and then he lands at the intelligent design camp, where all of this is tactics. He basically is the applied end of Philip Johnson's approach to intelligent design, which is try to poke holes in it. And if you poke enough holes in it, you discount it enough, they can then come in and say, oh, by the way, Jesus, John 1:1, this is the word. Mm-hmm.
right.
So it's
Yep.
always been, for those two, an evangelical enterprise masquerading as a science. And the fact that nothing about intelligent design, for example, would preclude the idea of multiple designers. And yet none of them entertain that idea because wink, wink, nudge, nudge, they know exactly who the designer is. And when you go down into the footnotes, like Michael or Bill Dembski, he'll admit it's Jesus Christ. Thank you very much. And so they're not,
Right.
they don't entertain those possibilities at all. So that's the stuff that I kind of keep track of in terms of what will eventually be another book, the Coulter Camp book on the anti-evolution movement, its conservative nature, and also its desire to take over the educational system and society to make everything over to be favorable to their view. Yipes. And that bunch, Tony Perkins and his set, the more Mark Meadows, who is defying Congress as we speak, is from the Ken Ham framework. A whole bunch of people from Tony Perkins's Council on National Policy have been stuck into things, including on an election watch commission just recently. And so they are having effects on things. They've been staking it up for a long time, and we ignore it to our peril. Anyway, that's stuff that I'm keeping track of for a later book. It's nearing the top of the hour. Where we've run a good luck. We've gone over 49 minutes without a problem on here. So thank you, everybody. Keep spreading the word about the project. If you can become a patron, that helps a lot too. RJ has a furnace to repair and other such things, and ink to buy. So I'm keeping at it as well as things. Thank you, Jackson, for being able to show up. Thank you, Restream, for not burping during the show. And we'll catch you all next week. See you then, or